Hello, I'm here today with Lee Towe, who is one of the nicest people on LinkedIn. And shouldn't I say that? I don't know.
Oh, shucks.
And the CEO of Pie Growers. Did I get that right?
Yes, pie growers. And I'm the only person. So yes, CEO is fine.
Yes. And I want to learn a little bit about your idea here, which is about collaboration and stuff, but we will hear more about you. So welcome, and let's start drawing. I would like to know who you're working with. On the left side, we draw their struggles and we draw what they hope to get out of it on the right side. So this is the problem pit, this is the paradise, and how you get them there.
I'll give you just a little background. 30 years ago, there were 9 communities where I live then and now again that weren't cooperating very well. One of the communities had built a botanical center, and the incomes and expenses from that were jealous from the other communities in terms of, hey, we helped you create this regional facility, and yet we don't get any of the rewards. And so as other communities started to do things, they weren't getting along. They didn't want that to happen again. And so the Leadership Institute said, hey, Lee, would you work with us to create a simulation so that people can figure out when it's good to cooperate and when you should compete? And the basis of that is, you could call it a zero-sum game, but because that just glazes everybody's eyes over, let's refer to it as a pie, and whether or not we're fighting for shares of the same pie, or whether we can grow our region together and have savings. And just to fast forward a little bit on that story, it was several years later when they decided, hey, each of us has a facility to store the road salt that we put on roads when it snows. And why do all 9 of us need that? We could combine that if we can get along well enough, if we can agree where it should go and how this would work. We could build one place to store all of the road salt and not have 9 different buildings and 9 different loaders and repeat that. They got along well enough to pull it off. And 10 years after that, they knew that they had saved about $2 million through cooperation. So that was the first time that I helped people get along to say, hey, if we cooperate, if we don't get defensive, we can grow the benefits to all of us. So that's the origin. So in terms of who I currently would work with, or who I worked with over the next 30 years up until now, it would typically be large companies doing projects from Ernst & Young, EY, Baltic States Group in Europe, to American Express, tech people building websites to where all the stakeholders would get along, to departments of transportation to where they needed all of the stakeholders involved to get along and work together to make the projects possible. So those are the people I primarily worked with, the adults, to say, how do we keep everybody on the same page so where we don't fight over a fixed pie, but if we realize we all get along, the benefits to all of us will grow. And then that applies to many people in many places.
What example should we take? This here is the road salt example. 9 communities and with 9 road salt storage units, and here they have 1 and saving.
Yes, that's exactly what those buildings look like. That's perfect. So they had 9 different buildings, and each of them was had their own contract for road salt. So one of the big savings was they got a much better price per ton for the salt in purchasing. So their purchasing agreement grew. But in terms of a symbol, the sheds and the little tractor that loaded them up, that's a great symbol for how they saved.
I would like to draw the person who is taking the decision, or maybe a group of people who are deciding. On the left, these are leaders of
towns, of cities, of communities.
And they are all on their islands. Everybody
Yes,
is sitting on.
and they're not happy.
So what is happening? What is his concern?
His concern was first, hey, you in another community, you're getting more benefit than I am. So I've decided I'm not going to cooperate. Then that person decides, hey, in my community, I want to bring a national golf tournament and have it be located in our community. Another community wants to build a soccer complex. Another community wants to build an ice hockey facility. And if they would cooperate with each other, they could get all of these things done. On their own, they can't get those things done. So they're frustrated by a lack of cooperation. The city leaders got to the point that they proposed a new level of government called a charter commission that would say, hey, because we can't seem to voluntarily do this, let's create a level of government, a new layer that will divide things up for us. And they put that up for a vote among the people living there. And the people said, no, we don't need another layer of government to make this happen. You can figure this out. You can figure out how to get along and how to make things better, much like the road salt facility. We need people with the authority to make us work together, is what they thought. No one had the authority to make other people do things. And yet leadership is more about influence and how you can work with one another and point out, look, how if we all work together, if we have a common vision, that we're all better off. And can you see how we will all be better off if you can see this common vision?
And what is happening with the people?
They actually can't get started with their projects because they don't have enough money or cooperation or public backing. So they're all on separate islands and they are not able to get as much done as they could if they would help one another out. Exactly. I love the little circles, the islands that they're on there. Some people might call them silos, whatever, but they're separate and they're not communicating. They're not understanding each other's needs. They're not listening, and not much is getting done.
And the people in the community?
The people in the community, first of all, don't know what they're missing. What's happening in the community is that the community citizens are missing out on the benefits. Think of if they had the savings of $2 million among them to spread among them. But if they hadn't gotten together, they would have missed out on that $2 million in savings. They would have spent that $2 million and none of them really would have known the difference. That's one of the difficult things about this pie growing concept is that we don't really know what we're missing out on, what the alternative path is. That's where somebody who is a grower comes in and says, look, here's the vision of what's possible. Compare this future alternative to this other future alternative. Which one would you like?
Yeah. So they think it's normal.
Yes, they often do. Now, at times there's frustration with the fact that they don't get along because sometimes the disputes will air publicly or in the media, and then people are disappointed and will say cliches like, can't we all just get along? So there's a sense sometimes of frustration that there isn't better cooperation among the people, and especially among the leaders in charge, the ones that have access to shared funds.
But the problem is, I guess, that if they don't get along, they blame each other, right?
Yeah, oh, yes. Yes, that's a very good point.
So you can't really sell to somebody who doesn't know they have a problem.
That is often the case. That is often the case. And so step number one in helping people come over to growing the pies is the awareness that there actually is something wrong and that there's something they can do about it. And maybe not even something wrong, but something could be much better.
But they're not looking for something better. They're looking to destroy the others, or not destroy, but
Yes, yes, to compete with others. And the word destroy, that's a great thing to bring up because we can compete, and sometimes competition is good in many cases. Sometimes it's fun, sometimes it's motivational. And if we remain positive with the competition, we can try to excel. And if two parties or more are trying to all get better, that's not such a bad thing to compete with one another and try to get better. What really is a bad thing is when they try to be better than somebody else by knocking the other person down. That's what we see in elections so often because they know it's a win-lose situation. They know all they have to do is stay ahead of the other party. They don't really have to suffer the consequences of whether they have shrunk the pie of goodness or of savings for everybody. They just have to beat the other person to get into office, to win an election. And so in those cases, quite often, it's so tempting to spend your resources on knocking the other person down, making them look bad. And so if you look better than the alternative, then you can win a win-lose situation. And that's sad. That's when the pies actually shrink. Forget the whole growing the pie thing. Sometimes the goal is to just not get them into a competitive situation in which they start shrinking the pies. And again, pie is the total sum of good things that we have to share among us.
So they all feel bad. They are in a win-lose situation. They don't know about, they don't even dream about something. Do they have a vision of how they want things to be?
Some might, but that is part of the key. A vision is a very important thing, and that's a vision is what separates really a growth mindset from pie growing. A growth mindset doesn't necessarily have a vision. The great book by Carol Dweck on mindset focused on, hey, let's not compete with one another. So those people that you drew that were fighting with one another, don't compare yourselves to another person. Don't let your light be compared to another person's light. Don't compare two flowers to figure out which one's better. Don't compare two companies or two grades in school or whatever the case may be. So just look at the progress you've made and don't worry about making mistakes. So there was a lot of good things in this growth mindset as it was defined that way. Then the difference that what pie growing adds to that is where are we headed? So the focus is no longer my own growth from past to present, but it's on where are we headed? And you start to compare progress versus how far we've gone toward that vision. So you're right. The vision is an important aspect of growing the total goodness, is showing people, hey, here's what it looks like when we get there.
How do they feel? I mean, if somebody feels good competing, then you will not convince them, right? If they feel good knocking others down, then that's a lost case.
Right. And if all they want to do, so this, I don't know if we want to go there, but if you're the leader of a country and you want to go to war against the other country, and if you're winning that war, you might feel like, hey, I'm winning. And maybe deep in your soul, or when it comes to your eulogy, maybe at that point you'll feel badly. But at the time that you're beating somebody else, you feel like, hey, this is the way it is.
Yes.
And it's because the paradigms they've grown up in have been all compete oriented. They grew up playing ball against one another, football, soccer, whatever. And as they chose teams, they were the first person chosen. They ranked high. They did compare well against others. So in athletics or in military conflict or in courtroom situations or in job promotions, there are all kinds of win-lose situations, and a person can get hooked on that win-lose and continue to want to do better than others. A lot of times when it comes to heads of governments, those are people who put themselves up for election because an election process is a win-lose situation, and it will attract those kinds of people disproportionately to become leaders, people who are elected leaders, because you have to go through an election process. You have to go through this win-lose process. And appropriate in most of those places. It's not that competition is all bad. There are places for competition. Sometimes things are scarce. Sometimes there really is only one job opening available. And so the scarcity of the win-lose is that there's just one job and there are 10 or 100 applicants. And so we get used to competing against others in many situations.
So the problem is not the win-lose mindset in society. The problem is that win-lose is seen as the only option.
Yes, yes. That's excellent. To carry the pie analogy further, and this is something I've just stumbled into more recently, really, in these last couple of years, where this has been my major focus, is I realize these pies are stacked. There are multiple pies in play. So the problem becomes when the top pie, your top priority, is a win-lose. You never want your top priority pie to be win-lose. As long as you see something above that. So in a basketball game, if you have, it would be called good sportsmanship, because you compete hard to win the ball game, and yet at the end of the game, you're still hoping that everybody is healthy. You recognize you were part of something that was a good competition, made everybody better on both sides because you tried your best to beat the other person, and yes, you lost that. If that pie, winning or losing the game, if that's your top priority, you're going to have a hard time dealing with either success or loss, because that's ultimately it. If that's wrapped up in a bigger sense of purpose, in a bigger sense of, hey, look how we came together, look at the Olympic Games, look at the purpose of that originally. It wasn't necessarily to be the winner of the Olympic Games, it's the spirit of all those countries coming together. And so there was a bigger pie above, priority-wise, the games themselves, right? And as long as we have the top pie be an expandable pie, not win-lose, but the possibility of, I'll call it win-win, but it's even bigger than that. Growing a pie is bigger than simply win-win. But make the top pie expandable, and then we'll be okay. And you can have this stack of pies that some are fixed, and it'll be fun or motivational or necessary sometimes because there's scarcity. The other reason it's necessary sometimes is that the other people have learned to be competitors or grabbers, if you will, grabbers of the slice, and they're not really trying to grow the pie. So always in the stack of priorities, have an expandable pie at the top, so that goodwill or faith, hope, love, if you will, those things which are intangibles, and there are no limits to those, what I call infinite intangibles. To have people be encouraged, those things that at our funeral we hope we're set up upon. It's not so much this person was the winner of the 1947 games. It was this person brought people together. This person excelled. This person was a good and kind person. So those are the pies we want on top.
Yeah, they all say in reality, I want to win, or we want to win. It's probably I want to win because they identify with a goal.
That's exactly right.
And you help them to build a overarching pie that is expandable.
It's winning by expanding what's possible and improving quality of life, then that's better because we can all work together and make that happen.
But we still have the problem that the people on the left don't want to expand what's possible. They want to win.
Yes.
Of course. But how could we do that more large scale?
I think it's the showing examples. I would love to be able to bring people into a room and have them all go through this simulation and then go through debriefing and have them realize, oh, the decisions I just made in the last half hour worked against myself. If I had done something else, I would be better off. So to the extent that I can help people experience the choices they make and how they could be better, or tell the stories, or draw a lovely diagram with before and after and the tool to get there, then people will get to that aha that will be, oh, there's a better way. So one of the great tools that I use that just took a minute with people along these lines over the last 30 years is if I had people in a class or in a presentation, I would ask two volunteers to thumb wrestle. And they go, yeah, we're going to thumb wrestle each other. Great. Okay, here it is. Here's the rules. You have 30 seconds to thumb wrestle each other. Every time you pin the other person's thumb for a second, you'll get a quarter. You've got 30 seconds, go. And so they locked hands and fingers and they're going like this. And on average, how many times do you think one person pins the other person's thumb in 30 seconds? So the answer to that is 3. Sometimes it's 0 or 1. Sometimes they never get a pin the other person's thumb, and other times one person will be really good and they'll have 4 or 5. So I will pay out on average 3 quarters, 3 25-cent coins in US dollars to people, and that's how much I'll pay out. Then when I'm paying them, I'll say, what would have happened if you had cooperated? And they'll think for a minute and go, well, if we had cooperated, 30 seconds, we can pin a person every 1 second. So we could have earned 30 quarters. We could have earned 30 times this coin, right? And we settled for 3. And that starts the juices flowing to go, where else have I jumped in with my competitive reflexes and not taken advantage of something much bigger, right? So experiences like this, stories of people who behave this way, because we're trying to overcome all of the case studies, all of the experiences a person has had in their life, dozens, hundreds, maybe thousands of times that they've experienced competition, the spelling bee, the ranking, all those times. And to say there is another way, even though you've experienced competition and you feel let down, and sometimes you let your guard down and you tried to cooperate and it ran over you, and so you've kind of given up on that. And who are the leaders who are doing this? And in my experience in describing behaviors from growing to grabbing, about 10% of the time people actually take a growing approach, a growth mentality. There are leaders doing that, right? And then there are people who are the grabbers, who are focused on their slice of the pie. They're only trying to make their slice bigger. And if they're not trying to make the whole pie bigger, then their only way they're getting their bigger slice is by taking it from other people. And so to change that paradigm, that's the goal. And I think examples, stories, illustrations, showing people what they're missing.
So everybody's trying to get a slice. Yeah, I think what you said, the competitive reflexes, this is really at the base of it all. Because when I hear about what else could you do, that's against the rules.
Right.
But who is saying that these are the rules?
Yes. Yes.
So we have to change the rules.
Yes.
Or
yes.
the rule reflex, or whatever you call it.
Right. It's the underlying assumptions. And now I'm a big fan of assumptions. I think assumptions are fantastic. The difference is stated assumptions versus unstated assumptions. The unstated assumptions, those ones that are hidden and where we have different assumptions or wrong assumptions, those are the ones we have to flush out and uncover. So unstated assumptions, the ones that we're not aware of, those are the problems.
Mm-hmm.
So in the pie chart that you have that you're pointing to, one of the cautions I give when we talk about win-win is if two people try to make each of their slices bigger of that pie, the pie chart itself could remain the same size, right? So it's possible to have win-win without growing the pie. And look, I'll take win-win as a positive step. At least you took two people who may have normally have competed and they both got better. It's even better if they realize, oh, we did it in such a way that grew the entire pie. It wasn't now just the two of us taking from what was available, but we created. And realizing that we're all creative creatures. I mean, there's another assumption that we have to overcome is people will think, oh, I'm not creative, because we've defined creativity as dealing with arts or in some special way. Again, ironically, we have ranked that versus others. I'm not as creative as you. Whereas if you just realize we can all contribute to a whole, if you contribute to the whole of kindness in the world, the smile, the kind gesture that you added, you increased that pie. You created new pie when you did that. You didn't have to become Leonardo da Vinci to make that happen. You increased that thing that you hold in high esteem. So helping people understand that they can actually contribute to and grow a whole is helpful. And another assumption that sort of hurts us is when people think of abundance. I did a poll on LinkedIn and asked people, is abundance created or does it exist? And it was split 50-50. If we believe that abundance already exists and we don't think about where the companies that do stuff for us or the food that we get, that it's created by somebody, that somebody grows that food, somebody creates that opportunity, somebody put that water system in place that we're using to get our fresh water, right? And so the abundance of things that we sort of take for granted, we have to realize we are the ones creating the abundance. Even when you wake up in the morning, the energy that's in a household or in a company, that positive energy is recreated every day. It's by the choices we make and the things that we do, the actions that we take. And so we are the ones creating the abundance. We are much more creative, all of us, than we give ourselves credit for. And so when we realize we can create, because the one thing, you don't always have to have a vision to grow the pie, I've discovered, but you always have to, by definition, that's to create more pie. And if you've created more pie, guess what? You're creative because you just added to, you just contributed, right? So we have a lot of assumptions getting in the way of people think they can participate in this.
So the first thing is that they have to see that something could be better.
Yes.
Then interesting is also have the expandable pie on top. I wonder if there could be a simpler.
Oh, I see. Yeah, this is where this process is so helpful because I will get caught up in using words that people don't understand. So when I say expandable pie, I'm trying to help insert that language, but that language isn't helpful if you don't understand it the first time.
Is it a win-win pie? Non-competitive?
It is, yes, yes. Technically, it could be competitive, but the one thing, it's capable of getting bigger. It's capable of being better, of capable of being more, that there are not limits on it that we place on it that we're fighting over the same amount.
I see that.
Part of it is if when I go back to again what I call the infinite intangibles, because people can understand that on like faith, hope, love, there are no limits on that. It's not like there's only so much of that to go around, right? And so focusing on the easy, the low hanging fruit, the easy ones to get. And as it happens, the good news in all of this is ultimately what were referred to as virtues, those things that we want to be known for in the end, not so much right now, but ultimately, what do we want to be known for? Those happen to be things which are expandable, that it was a good person, that the person made the world better, that there was kindness, that the person offered hope, that the person offered encouragement. Those things are all limitless, right? Now, sometimes we will feel jealous of someone who gets known for that, and we'll go, oh, that person's known for kindness. I wanted to be known for kindness. Well, yeah, we just have to do more work on that because why compare ourselves to other people? Some of us will be known to a greater number of people, in other words, famous or have celebrity status, perhaps 1 million people will know of one person. But if you grow up in one community and maybe only 5 or 6 people ever know of what you've done for this world, that's okay. That's not a bad thing. To go deep with a handful of people and to have really cared for someone in your family your whole life, that was your main purpose. And you have really added to the kindness in the world, you've added to the good things in the world. So recognizing that some of the best things that we desire to do, to be known for, to be associated with in the world are unlimited. And we don't have to compete with others on our ability to grow that total amount.
What is you consider low-hanging fruit?
I think the low-hanging fruit, because there are good things, total sums of good things that are fairly limited, like the number of jobs available. If the number of jobs available in your community is 1,000 jobs, maybe that can get increased to 1,100 or 1,200, but there's a limit on that, right? There's about only so many of that can happen. And then other things can be increased more, like the total number of sales or the size of a market that companies are competing for. Maybe we can double that. Maybe it's a really great market that we could take it 10 times, but there are some limitations. And the reason I call that the unlimited things low-hanging fruit is it's hard to argue that kindness, hope, encouragement, people understand fairly quickly that that is unlimited. So that's why I referred to in this case that as low-hanging fruit, is we don't really have to convince somebody very hard on paper with a spreadsheet, hey, this total can be grown and you can be part of that. That's the low-hanging fruit in this case.
Mm-hmm. Okay. What I would like to do now is also draw the vision that you have to convey to them. They have to be able to see themselves.
Right.
Right now, the overarching game is I need to win. And
right.
You have to tell them to give up their items.
And so the vision is the money that they have available to them, they'll have more of it for other things if they coordinate and pay less for one of the things they're currently doing. That we can all save money in this case, and that will make more money available for other things that we want. They'll be happier, the citizens of their communities will be happier, and as it turns out, they get themselves reelected. It helps in the win-lose game, right? It helps on the things that they think they have to protect in a vicious way. They can actually get there in a good way.
Like that, or is that too much?
No, that's entirely appropriate. They're working together. And so that's not too much. That's perfect.
What are more good things that are happening? Saving money. If you want to talk with these people here, you have to give them something, promise them something they need or they want right now. Because they only want to make their goal bigger if it also meets their immediate need,
yes.
Saving money or making more money.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Do they also feel better now? In my drawing, they look happier.
They do feel better. Who really wants to go to bed at night thinking of ways to defeat other people and to run other people down? That just negativity is there. So end up with a positive mindset.
Do you have an idea how this could apply for these new AI tools that are coming up now and are so scary in a way? How can we find the bigger pie? The expandable
pie? Just going, yes. AI, artificial intelligence, is simply going to leverage and magnify our human behaviors. It's just going to speed it up. It's going to take away some of our safety net, right? Mm-hmm. It will work for us. And if we're working in a positive way, it will speed up. We'll have the ability to model future pandemics. We'll have the ability to model weather forecasting or global climate. We'll have the ability to model those things very fast. To steal identities, for example, we'll have those same tools. It's just going to ramp up the consequences of where we're headed. So we just have to keep good people continually pursuing excellence, pursuing what's possible, so that we have people with the higher ethics and the higher values, with the knowledge, with the power to keep us in balance.
Yeah. Here we have it. Pie growing.
One of the things I love about what you do in the illustrations is that I use the metaphor of a pie because I think it's more appealing and easier than the phrase zero-sum game, for example.
Mm.
Yet, it's almost a buzzword. It's a word that needs a little bit of definition, and so it kind of gets in the way of just using regular words. And one of the things that you're great at is using plain language to say what's really happening here. And then you take that a step further to use this other language that you're gifted in of visual arts, and to draw a picture with that speeds up the communication even more so.
Are you a consultant or author or both? You're probably both.
Author, wrote a book on creativity, that I'm working on the pie growing book at this time, and we'll see how long that takes to happen. But I'm a founder of the pie growing terminology and templates. So I'm founding this term for everybody to use freely. I'm semi-retired.
Used to be a consultant.
Yes, consultant, corporate trainer. I've always been a teacher, so my skill set is really a teacher and the creation of online courses. So eventually we would hope to create the online courses. So the experiences that I have, you asked, how does this change, to make this available at low or no cost to people to figure out, hey, how does this work? I'm a trainer, a teacher, a consultant.
Great. I learned a lot. I learned about the expandable pie. Always look for the expandable pie. If that's maybe something that people can take away here also, like normal people who are not city leaders. If I'm in a situation where I'm competing with somebody and I think there's not enough, then look for the bigger pie, which is also a low-hanging fruit and always unlimited.
Yes.
I have to emphasize this a little more in the drawing. That was great. Thank you so much.
Good. You've captured it beautifully, and thank you so much. It's marvelous to see these take shape as an illustration. You're very gifted at it, and don't sometimes we overlook the talents, the gifts that we have, because we think, oh, everybody could do this. And I'm telling you, Ingrid, not everybody can do this.
Oh yes, so, come to my course, and you can do it too.
Well, there's that. There's that. I bought a just because of you, I bought an iPad and a pen. So, so I have hopes one day to spend more time doing that. But I have like a website to get done, and I have some other things to get done.
Yeah, but that's also, this is fun and relax, and probably it would be helpful if you're presenting something. Then
yes,
so
it is. I believe in it. No convincing needed.
Have a nice day.
Okay, thanks.
Bye-bye.
You too. Bye, Ingrid.